Hey, how are you doing? In today's video, I want to talk to you about the truth about emotional exhaustion according to the Bible. Exhaustion according to the Bible. You're standing in your kitchen at 6 in the morning. The coffee's brewing. Your hands are shaking. Not from the caffeine. From the weight of everything you're carrying. Your kids need you. Your wife needs you. Your job needs you. Your friends call you the strong one. The guy who's got it together, the guy who never breaks. And so you don't. You just keep moving. You keep solving. You keep pretending that you're not hollow inside. But the hollow is getting bigger. Every day. It started as a whisper. Now it's a scream you're learning to smile through. You lie awake at night. 3 in the morning. 4 in the morning. Your mind won't shut off. Your chest feels tight. You've forgotten what it feels like to actually rest. Not sleep, rest. There's a difference. Sleep is when your body finally gives up. Rest is when your mind actually stops running. And your mind hasn't stopped in years. You've become an expert at exhaustion. You know how to function while completely empty. You know how to show up while falling apart. You know how to be the strong one while secretly falling at the seams. And the worst part, nobody sees it, because you've learned to hide it perfectly. You've turned your breaking into a performance, and every single day you get a little bit better at the lie. If you're living in that kind of exhaustion right now, if you're tired of pretending everything's fine, hit that subscribe button, because we need to talk about what happens when a man runs out of fuel. And I'm telling you, you're not alone in this. Because emotional exhaustion isn't just tiredness. It's a spiritual crisis. It's your soul telling you that something has to change. And if you ignore that signal long enough, there's nowhere left to go. But to understand how this all started, I need to take you back to something that happened in the Bible. To a man who'd just experienced the greatest victory of his life. And then, in the span of a few hours, he collapsed completely. And on that day, everything seemed perfectly normal. His name was Elijah. And he was a prophet, not the gentle kind, the kind who stood alone against impossible odds. He'd spent his whole life speaking God's truth in a world that didn't want to hear it. He'd watched empires crumble. He'd called down fire from heaven. He'd faced kings and won. This wasn't a man who was weak. This was a man who'd built his entire identity on being unbreakable. But here's what people don't talk about. Strength like that comes with a cost. It comes with isolation. It comes with the knowledge that you can't afford to break. That if you do, everything falls apart. So you don't break. You just keep standing, alone, year after year, decade after decade. Elijah had just finished his greatest moment. He'd stood on Mount Carmel with 400 false prophets, and he'd called on God. And God answered. Fire came down from heaven. The prophets were exposed. The people turned back to God. It was a complete, total victory. Everything he'd worked for. Everything he'd sacrificed for. And then he found out that Queen Jezebel was coming for him. She wanted him dead. And in that moment, something broke. He ran. This man who'd faced down armies. This man who'd called down fire from heaven. He ran into the wilderness. Alone, and he kept running. He ran for 40 days and 40 nights, until he came to a mountain called Horeb, the mountain of God. And then he did something that tells you everything about where he really was. He crawled into a cave, and he waited to pass from this world, because he was done, completely done. All that strength, all that victory, all that sacrifice, it wasn't enough. He was too tired to keep going, too tired to keep fighting, too tired to keep being the strong one. And in that cave, in complete darkness, Elijah asked God to let him stop living. Now listen to me. This isn't weakness. This is what happens when a man has been running on empty for so long that he forgets what full oven feels like. This is what happens when strength becomes a prison instead of a gift. This is what happens when you've given everything you have and there's nothing left to give. The cave is where the real story begins. Because God didn't scold Elijah. God didn't tell him to toughen up. God didn't remind him of all his victories. Instead, God did something that seems almost too simple. God sent an angel, and that angel brought bread and water and said, "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you." Do you hear that? Not the strength, not the victory, not the accomplishment. The journey is too much for you. God was saying what Elijah desperately needed to hear, that it's okay to admit you can't do this alone, that admitting the journey is too much isn't failure. It's the moment when real strength actually begins. Elijah ate, and then he lay down and slept. The angel came again and brought more food, and again said, "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you." And Elijah ate again, and he rested again. And then, strengthened by that simple provision, he traveled 40 days to the mountain of God, not to find a new strategy, not to make a new plan, but to stand in the presence of God and let God show him something he'd forgotten. God asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah poured it all out. "I've been very zealous for the Lord. The people have turned away. They've torn down your altars. They've killed your prophets. And I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. I'm completely alone." And God said, "Go out and stand on the mountain. I'm about to pass by." And then came a great wind, so powerful it tore the mountains apart. But God wasn't in the wind. Then came an earthquake, shaking the ground beneath Elijah's feet. But God wasn't in the earthquake. Then came a fire, consuming everything in its path. But God wasn't in the fire. And then came a gentle whisper, a still, small voice. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his cloak around his face, because in that whisper he recognized the presence of God. This is the moment that changes everything. Elijah had been looking for God in the dramatic, in the powerful, in the visible victory, in the moment when everyone could see that he was strong. But God wasn't there. God was in the whisper, in the quiet, in the moment when nobody was watching, in the moment when Elijah finally admitted he couldn't do this alone. And God asked him again, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah gave the same answer, the same pain, the same isolation, the same despair. He hadn't suddenly figured it out. He wasn't suddenly fixed. But something was different now, because he'd heard God in the whisper, and he knew he wasn't alone. And God gave him a new assignment, not because everything was suddenly okay, but because Elijah had finally learned the truth about strength. That real strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being willing to break and be healed. It's about admitting the journey is too much and letting someone else carry part of it. Here's what I've learned in 30 years of working with people who are exhausted. The exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from trying to do it all alone, from believing that strength means never needing help, from thinking that admitting weakness is the same as being weak. But that's a lie. And it's a lie that's destroying millions of men right now. In my 30 years of practice, I've watched strong men break, not because they weren't capable, but because they finally admitted that being capable wasn't the same as being sufficient. They realized that the journey really is too much for one person, and that admitting that isn't failure. It's the beginning of real strength. My wife and I have been married 40 years, and one of the things I've learned from her is this: strength for her has always looked different than strength for me. She's never believed that asking for help is weakness. She's never believed that admitting confusion means you're lost. She's never believed that showing emotion is the same as breaking. And you know what that's given her? Peace, clarity, direction, a life that's full instead of empty. But me, for the first 20 years of our marriage, I was Elijah in that cave, strong on the outside, completely hollow on the inside. I was the provider, the protector, the one who always had the answer, and I was dying, slowly, from the inside out. It wasn't until I finally broke that I understood what Elijah learned on that mountain, that the journey really is too much for me, that I can't carry everything, that strength doesn't mean never needing help, it means knowing when to ask for it. So here's what I want you to do, starting today. 3 things. First, stop pretending, just for a moment, just in the privacy of your own mind. Admit the truth. The journey is too much for you. You can't do this alone. You've been trying, and it's killing you. But you can't do it alone, and that's okay. That's not failure, that's honesty. And honesty is where healing starts. Second, reach out. One person, not everyone, not social media. One person you trust, and tell them the truth. Tell them you're exhausted. Tell them you're tired of pretending. Tell them you need help. Because the moment you say it out loud to another human being, something shifts. The weight gets a little bit lighter, because you're not carrying it alone anymore. Third, rest. And I don't mean sleep, I mean actually rest. Stop doing. Stop fixing. Stop performing. Just be. Be quiet. Be still. Let yourself feel how tired you actually are, because you can't heal while you're still running. Healing happens in the stillness, in the cave, in the whisper, in the moment when you finally admit that you can't do this anymore. When you do these 3 things, something's gonna change. Not everything, not immediately. Your circumstances might not change. Your problems might not disappear, but something inside you is gonna shift, because you're gonna stop carrying the weight of pretending to be strong, and you're gonna discover what real strength actually is. It's admitting you're weak. It's asking for help. It's resting when you need to rest. It's hearing the whisper of God in the quiet moments. It's knowing that you're not alone. Elijah didn't become stronger after that encounter. He became different. He still had hard days. He still had moments of doubt, but he never forgot what he learned in the cave and on the mountain, that the journey is too much for him. And that's okay, because he was never meant to walk it alone. Your life might look the same on the outside. Your job might look the same. Your family might look the same. But inside, you're gonna find something you thought you'd lost. Peace, purpose, the ability to rest without guilt, the freedom to be honest about how tired you are, and the understanding that being honest about your exhaustion isn't weakness. It's the beginning of real strength. And here's what I want you to understand. The people who love you don't need you to be invincible. They need you to be present. They need you to be real. When you finally admit that the journey is too much, when you finally ask for help, you're not disappointing them. You're giving them permission to be human too. You're showing them that vulnerability isn't failure. It's the foundation of real connection. It's the bridge that brings people closer instead of pushing them away. And that's more powerful than any performance of strength could ever be. That's what happened in my own life. When I finally broke, when I finally admitted I couldn't do it all alone. My wife didn't lose respect for me. She gained compassion for me. My kids didn't see a weaker father. They saw a real one. They saw someone willing to change, someone willing to be honest, and that changed everything. Not just for me, for them, for our whole family, because I gave them permission to stop pretending too. So if this has meant something to you today, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because next week I'm going to talk to you about what happens when you finally start resting, and you don't want to miss that conversation. And leave a comment down below. Tell me this. What's one thing you've been pretending to handle alone that you actually need help with? I'm going to be reading those comments. Every single one. Because your story matters. Your exhaustion is real. And you're not alone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being honest with yourself today. I'll see you in the next video.